this world.
You know, David Cage is sort of a pretentious frog. I don't really have a strong opinion about the guy outside of that. I never played Omicron, the Nomad Soul, so I can't say squat about that game. Same thing with Beyond Two Souls. And what the heck is it with Quantum Dream and naming their games with a title, a colon, and a subtitle? Yeah, I know, Yahtzee Croshaw pointed out the same thing, but this bugs me too. Especially since with today's topic, it doesn't really feel necessary. Detroit, Become Human? But you don't become a human in this game, spoilers. This isn't Bicentennial Man. A robot does not become human, he just becomes sentient. So I prefer to call it Detroit Become Not Robot. Anyway, my history with this studio is interesting, because the games I've seen the most complaints about are the ones I haven't played. I enjoyed Indigo Prophecy, or Fahrenheit as it's known across the pond, and Heavy Rain was good for memes and short-haired sexy ladies, so I can't complain about that much there either. I mean, it gave us Press X to Jason when it's dead. In truth, though, I thought that the game was an interesting premise with an execution that could have been better had they put more money into the acting budget. I loved Indigo Prophecy because it was so fucking loony. It's like if the Wachowski brothers were given a bigger batch of acid, as opposed to a copy of Ghost in the Shell and a giant dose of mental illness. Let's just get the technical crap out of the way real quick. The visuals are pretty good, but it's not Dad of War or Gears of War 4 in regards to looks. A lot of wars in video games, aren't there? Anyway, the controls are like any other game from this studio. Bad. Yeah, moving around is tank-like and it's not exactly streamlined. The thing is, you're mostly going to be doing quick time events, and if you're not doing that, you're walking around. The difference between maybe this game and some walking simulators or something like The Vanishing of Ethan Carter is that you should be prepared for motion control bits and use of the PlayStation 4's touchpad, where you swipe to interact with touchscreens. Believe it or not, I actually like that bit. The thing about the visuals is that in this day and age, graphics are not at a point where we can do human beings and not hit the uncanny valley. I can't think of a better time in history to do a story about androids than right now, because they do look like human robots. So, it's sort of like a bunch of Mark Zuckerbergs running around. It fits. The facial mocap is really good and helps communicate the performances, but textures are not exactly photorealistic. That's perfect uncanny valley levels when it comes to this sort of thing. It doesn't look bad by any stretch, but the style and level of technology aren't at the point where characters are good enough to look like real people. What I'm trying to say is that it doesn't look as trash as BioWare created characters. If you don't know what the uncanny valley is, do a bit of reading on it. The truncated version is that there is a point in technology with robotics or simulated humanity where you can tell it's a freaking robot and it's kind of scary because it looks just human enough to freak you out. So all I'm really saying is that this is the best time technology-wise to make a game with this particular setting. Also, the acting all around is much better than the previous games by Quantic Dream I've played, especially Clancy Brown. Now, I've always loved Clancy Brown, so sue me, but still, he does a really good job here. You see, they made a smart move by not grabbing Hollywood people, but rather actors who have done a fair share of voice acting too. Not to mention, if something comes across as kind of stiff or jilted, what do you know? They're androids. Uncanny Valley. But regardless, the actors in this story are familiar with the multiple ways to tell a story, just in case the physical performance doesn't translate well enough through this medium due to the level of technology we're at.
Thank you in advance for your cooperation.
We get the fuck out of here! Sumo! Attack! Good job.
So, now we need to talk about something else. There's this goofy question that gets thrown around by your Jim Sterling types who have no fucking clue what they're arguing about when it comes to this. Is Detroit Become Not Robot an actual video game? Yes, you pretentious douchebags, it is. It's a stupid question. It has failure states. It has interaction. Is it sort of a walking simulator with your occasional chase scene, interrogation, or kung fu fight? Yes, but unlike Firewatch or some other indie crap, this game actually has solid writing and plot structure, plus a way that the failure states have both short and long-term effects to the characters within the actual game. So, unlike Gone Home, this is actually worth a few accolades in that regard. I'm gonna bag on BioWare again here too, because it's nice to play a game where it feels like my choices have a fucking effect, as opposed to me choosing between hippie, fascist, or the only sensible fucking option in the face of oblivion when you're faced with giant octo-robots. Ugh. Okay, I'm done with that shit now. Anyway, this is a story where you can see the inspirations easily. It takes from RoboCop, Terminator, iRobot, and Blade Runner, and all of the above are blatantly pulled from, though the game still feels like its own thing. Thematically, it's just not that different. Beyond that, though, the places that the plot goes test you as the player as well. You have to keep in mind, you get to craft these characters and what they do and who they are. They're pretty much all blank slates, so go nuts. Let me give an example, though. There's a part in the story that really tests the moral mettle of one of the main characters in Marcus. I won't spoil it, but you either find yourself becoming the not-robot version of either Martin Luther King Jr. or the not-robot version of Che Guevara. Basically the former being the peaceful protester and the latter being a violent psychopathic takeover. Yes, Che Guevara was a very bad person. Fuck him. Anyway, you can understand why so many people are distrustful of androids. In the plot, given that several people have lost their jobs due to the robots taking over, plus androids going quote-unquote deviant and killing their owners. There isn't a point of this game where you're really wondering why the world is the way that it is. And that's kind of why I'm surprised that David Cage is the guy who wrote this. I figured somebody else did it and he just directed the game. The story doesn't really go that far off the rails, though there's a couple nutty moments. Compared to Indigo Prophecy's outright lunacy in the third act, and the random fighting dream sequence in Heavy Rain, this game has a much tighter plot. And as I mentioned earlier, your decisions can radically change how the story ends. It's a much more intriguing way to look at things. The weird part is that I feel like technology has finally caught up to David Cage's way of wanting to tell a story and have your decisions in the game impact you long term. Throughout my time with Detroit, I can't say I was ever bored either. I liked the characters quite a bit, though a couple of them are just one-note douchebags. But those one-note douchebags don't really have a whole lot of screen time. Regardless, though, this isn't like Oscar-worthy or something along those lines. It's just a fun little story. To conclude, do I recommend it? Yeah, I do. Not really as a $60 purchase, though. I got my copy for a bit cheaper off of Newegg. It's definitely an interesting game, with a story that's told fairly well. But the thing that I find most interesting is that PlayStation exclusives over the last decade really are stories that love to bring the feels. And that's why I'm glad I ended up buying the PS4. Quite frankly, what I like most about this game, though, is what it symbolizes. The idea that the story genres that we can experience in games are more than just action, horror, sci-fi, and so forth, though there are elements of that in this. The thing is, in games, we can have drama as well, which I feel isn't represented as much as I would like. I don't have an issue with it at all, unlike some people. Do I prefer most of my games to have at least more of a test of skill or interactivity to them? Absolutely. But at the same time, there's room for this sort of thing in video games. Basically, there's room in games for Dark Souls, and there's room in games for Detroit Become Not Robot. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit the like button and smash that notification bell, since the subscriptions on YouTube here these days are all curated by YouTube itself. Yeah, so it kind of makes it tougher for the little guy to get through. So go smash the bell! Anyway, my name is Micah Curtis, and welcome to my crusade. Deus Vult.
Connor, the fuck are you doing?
Coming, Lieutenant.